Coming up on Arirang News, Samsung Electronics posts its highest ever sales in the third quarter and its biggest operating profit in 2 years. But the next quarter, it says, won't be as good. U.S. stocks plunge as European countries, including France and Germany, start going back on lockdown. It's the worst day for the Dow since June. And South Korea's Supreme Court upholds a 17-year prison sentence for former President Lee Myung-bak, who was found guilty in 2018 of embezzlement and bribery. It's 5 o'clock p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea's Supreme Court this morning decided to uphold a prison sentence handed down to former President Lee Myung-bak, 17 years for embezzlement, bribe-taking, and other crimes. It also upheld fines worth around $11.5 million and the seizure of around $5 million. In the original verdict in 2018, Lee Myung-bak was convicted of embezzling around $31.7 million through an auto parts company, of which he was found to be the real owner. He was also convicted of taking bribes. The former president has been out on bail during the appeal, but he'll be taken back to prison. South Korea and Japan held talks today on a series of thorny issues, including Japan's subjection of Koreans to forced labor. Kim Jong-han, a senior foreign ministry official, sat down for talks in Seoul this morning with his Japanese counterpart, Shigeki Takizaki. These were the first director-level talks since Japan's new Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga took office last month. It's likely that they discussed the issues of compensation for the Korean victims of forced labor, as well as Tokyo's export curbs on Seoul and Japan's controversial plan to dump radioactive water from Fukushima into the sea. They could also have discussed a trilateral summit to be held in Seoul this year between South Korea, Japan, and China. The Japanese diplomat also met Seoul's top nuclear envoy, Lee Do-hun. South Korea reported 125 new COVID-19 cases on Thursday, and more than 100 of those were local cases. Cases are occurring sporadically across the country, linked to small gatherings, schools, and saunas. In response, the government will announce a revised set of social distancing measures this weekend. Under discussion are adjustments for different regions and taking into account the country's expanded capabilities in terms of disease control and medical care. As for this season's flu shot, which some in the public are concerned might not be safe, officials are getting vaccinated themselves to demonstrate that it is. Jung Eun-kyung, commissioner of the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, reportedly got vaccinated today, as did the Prime Minister and the Health Minister in recent days. Behind the Blue House, where the South Korean president lives, a hiking trail is opening to the public on Mount Bukaksan that had been closed for security reasons for the past 52 years. Overlooking downtown Seoul, the trail was closed after the so-called January 21st incident back in 1968, in which North Korean commandos used the trail in an attempt to assassinate the South Korean president at the time, Park Chung-hee. When it opens this Sunday, the trail will enable hikers to see the different construction styles of the old Seoul City Wall in one place. It'll also be a quicker and easier route to the top of the mountain. South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics posted its highest ever sales in the third quarter. Operating profit was also at a 2-year high, but it's not expecting such a good performance in the fourth quarter. Ji-young has the details.
In its third quarter earnings announcement, South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics posted an all-time high quarterly sales figure. The company announced on Thursday that it logged third quarter sales of around $59 billion, up 8% on year. This helped it haul in $10.9 billion in operating profit for July to September this year. That's an almost 59% jump from the same period a year earlier. This is the largest quarterly operating profit in 2 years. Analysts say Samsung Electronics' strong earnings were largely due to solid global sales of TVs, home appliances, and its latest smartphone series as consumers spent what they had held back in previous quarters.
The amount of smartphone and TV shipments were solid despite the COVID-19 pandemic, and the improvement in its semiconductor exports contributed to the record high sales.
The expert also attributed the strong performance to savings on marketing costs because efficiencies in online marketing increased and Samsung did not have to do as much as promotion at offline stores amid the outbreak. He also said Samsung Electronics has benefited from U.S. sanctions on the Chinese tech giant Huawei because Huawei urgently placed orders with Samsung for semiconductors and displays before the sanctions took effect. It also benefited in terms of smartphones as the sanctions helped to increase Samsung's share in competitive markets. However, earnings in the fourth quarter are expected to drop.
Marketing expenses are forecast to increase in the fourth quarter, and flagship shipments of smartphones are also expected to drop compared to the third quarter.
He added that semiconductor prices are expected to fall in the fourth quarter, which could contribute to a drop in earnings in the next quarter. 엄지영, Arirang News.
And because of a surge in coronavirus cases, European countries, including France and Germany, are re-implementing various levels of lockdown, causing stocks in Europe and the U.S. to plunge. Paeunji has this report.
French President Emmanuel Macron has announced a second nationwide lockdown starting Friday to contain the recent surge of COVID-19 cases. The lockdown period will last until at least the end of November, as France's daily death toll is at the highest level since April.
After exchanging with all our European partners and weighing the good points and bad points, I've decided that we needed, starting from Friday, to again put in place the lockdown that had stopped the virus.
The president added that the country is at risk of, quote, a second wave that no doubt will be harder than the first. His announcement came not long after the German chancellor declared a one-month lockdown in Germany starting next Monday. Other European countries are also seeing record-high numbers of confirmed cases. On Wednesday, Italy and the UK also reported their highest daily figure since May, with 24,911 new cases in Italy and 24,701 in the UK. Amid growing concerns over the lockdown in two of Europe's biggest economies and its potential impact on the global economy, U.S. stocks plunged on Wednesday. According to CNBC News, the Dow Jones and the S&P saw their worst drop since June 11th. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 3.4%, the S&P 500 fell 3.5%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq dropped 3.7%. This came after falls in the European markets. The German DAX fell 4.2% to its lowest figure since late May, while the French CAC 40 dropped 3.4%, and the FTSE 100 in London was down by 2.6%. Paeunji, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-won, professor of economics at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, good afternoon, and thank you for coming on.
Good afternoon, Devin.
Well, Samsung Electronics, as we heard just a minute ago, reported sales for the third quarter of around 67 trillion won, about $60 billion. That's a record. Operating profit also rose to a two-year high. What's behind this boom in sales?
Samsung Electronics represents a high-tech-based Korean economy. So much attention has been paid to Samsung Electronics' business performance. As we heard from previous report, in third quarter, Samsung Electronics recovered over $10 billion quarterly profit in 2 years. Samsung Electronics expectation-breaking revenues and earnings came from huge increase in mobile sales and also solid demands in memory chips under coronavirus crisis. Also, consumer electronics division sales doubled compared to the same period in last year.
Well, so it was a great third quarter, but Samsung is saying that profits in the fourth quarter won't be as good because of falling demand. What do you see happening in Q4?
Well, I pretty much agree with market's expectation that Samsung Electronics' fourth quarter business is not better than third quarters. It is highly expected that memory chip sales, which covers main part of Samsung Electronics' total revenue, decreases due to declining chip price over like 10%. Also, in third quarter, Huawei, which is one of the largest customers, has been aggressively purchasing memory chips ahead of U.S. government punishment. Samsung Electronics does not have these unusual demands in fourth quarter.
Right, and now we heard just a minute ago about stocks on Wall Street plunging overnight by the most since June in the case of the Dow because of the coronavirus spreading and Europe tightening its restrictions and the lack of a deal on new stimulus. So what's happening in global stocks?
As we saw from report, yesterday was a bad day for international stock investors. U.S. and European markets all collapsed with over negative 3% daily returns. As we know, the main reason for this sell-off is worsening coronavirus case numbers in U.S. and Europe made stronger restrictions imperative. And this potentially sets back economic recovery by intensifying lockdowns and shutdowns between Europe and U.S.
Now, the Kospi was down today here in Korea by more than 1%. And interestingly, the Kosdaq was not, again recovering from losses earlier this week. The Kospi actually closed down a little less than 1%. But what's happening in the Korean markets?
As U.S. and European market all closed sharply lower, Kospi also declined by 0.8% today. But Kosdaq increased by 1% today. Global stock markets effects are limited in domestic market because of better than expected business performances from major corporations in third quarter. But particularly, Kosdaq market's rise was driven by domestic institutional investors' big purchase.
And now the IMF is warning about asset prices rising far beyond maybe what might be appropriate considering the state of the global economy. Also warning of uncertainty the longer the pandemic goes on. Tell us about these warnings from the IMF.
Yes, historically, all asset prices like stocks, bonds, real estate, and so on are highly correlated in the long run because all these assets are part of the whole economy. I think IMF's recent warning on higher association between different assets provides important signals on asset management. To make a long story short, IMF's warning means traditional way of risk management, which is diversification, is not as effective as before. So more attention should be paid on financial asset management by the end of the COVID termination.
All right, Professor Kim, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Now, with people staying at home because of the pandemic, they're ordering more delivery food. And that means they're using more plastic. There's a growing movement, though, to turn this around by promoting a zero-waste lifestyle, as our Min-soo Hyun reports.
Environmental concerns have many consumers these days turning to the zero-waste movement, which seeks to eliminate waste by reducing, reusing, and recycling. The goal is for no trash to be sent to landfills and incinerators or littered. The movement is not new, but it's gaining interest among South Korean shoppers.
I don't know much about it yet, but I like the idea that we can buy things without using plastic bags. I'm going to look around a bit more and buy things that are eco-friendly.
At a zero-waste store, there's no plastic packaging at all. You go around, pick up pantry staples or organic products you need, and put them in a bag or reusable container. There, your shopping ends plastic-free, creating no waste. Demand for plastic-free shopping can also be seen at the big retail stores, which these days offer eco-friendly packaging. This shop uses packaging made from cornstarch, an organic material that is environmentally friendly. This biodegradable packaging allows customers to move away from plastics. At another store, there's a place to refill laundry detergent and fabric softeners. This not only contributes to low-waste living, it also saves customers a few pennies on the cost of packaging. More shops are going zero-waste, but it's still a challenge.
It is important to have more zero-waste shops, but what needs to come first is support for these stores, either in the form of policies or infrastructure.
It can be hard to resist the convenience of plastics and disposable things, but zero-waste living is something we can all feel good about taking part in. Min-soo Hyun, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.